I remember driving into a tree at about 70 miles an hour. I come to, I'm in a hospital. I can't move. I really just wanted to die. My home was a war zone. My father was very physically, emotionally. And I just remember my home always being screaming, yelling, cursing. Anytime I did anything wrong, there were consequences. I just always remember the pain and the fear. I was, for all intents and purposes, a feral child. I fed myself, I clothed myself. Still to this day, I think about my father's voice. It puts chills down my spine. That drove me into escaping, into numbing, into anything that would give me that dopamine. I remember being alone and never having true friends. Whenever it came to doing something, it required money. And still at that time, like I didn't have anything. I would be so afraid of them coming over that I'd be like, oh, no, 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 we can't go over to my house. I became a chameleon. I didn't know who I was. That had never been instilled in me before. All I knew was, fear and anger. As time went on, I would go down to the Jersey Shore and I would work. I was 12 years old. That was really my first instance with alcohol. So I had started smoking when I was, I don't know, 13. Anything to just fit in, anything to have camaraderie or friend group with anybody. I typically got along better with people that were older than me. I guess I was forced to grow up a little bit sooner than I should have. And I remember getting cold. I remember becoming distant. I was never good at personal relations because I had so much insecurity in me. I couldn't ever relate to anybody. Felt like, you know what? Like I'm not gonna have any friends. I'm just gonna use everybody. I'm just gonna manipulate everybody. Around that time was, when I first started becoming interested in women. I found out that I was, a good talker and charismatic and a ladies' man. And so I consistently used women to get a quick rush. And then when I was done, I was gone. As years went on, I got colder and colder. I started hanging out in a city near me that was known for open air market. I found my people. I started getting along with these people. I started doing deals with them. I started selling them stuff and them selling me stuff. And I realized looking back that like I was just looking for love anywhere I can find it. Most oftentimes it was in the wrong place. I had never had any sort of relationship with a girlfriend that had lasted more than 3 months because I had never seen what a good relationship looked like. It kind of skewed the way I looked at everything. I looked at people as possessions. I looked at women especially as possessions. I didn't see them as somebody that could bring something to my life. I looked at them as something that you use and then something you move on from. The grass is always greener. I was always looking for the next best thing. The girl who was prettier, the girl who had a nicer body. It was, very lonely, but it was also very tiring. In time, I started using coke very regularly. That took me down the road of using every day. And I thought like everything was under control. I thought I had everything handled, but my life was still chaos. I didn't have good relationships. I didn't have any relationships with friends. I didn't have any good relationships with women. It was always super toxic. I consistently want more and more and more. Years went on. And I ended up moving in with one of my brothers, and we would all the time. I just remember being in that state. Like anytime anything was happening, I could snip some and I could escape from it. I could fall asleep for a few hours. I remember going to a house party and there was maybe like 120 people there. And it ended up in like a 70-person outside. The cops were called. That night I had been charged with resisting arrest, aggravated assault on a peace officer, attempted disarming a peace officer. And that was one of those things to where I didn't really have any sort of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like in my mind, I was like, I should have pulled the trigger or I should have hit them harder. That was my mindset. And it was culmination of years and years and years of repressed anger, from my father. Looking back on it, I remember my mother was just as scared as I was. And so she would leave for the whole entire day when my father would come home and leave me there. And so I had a lot of anger and resentment towards my mother as well. And I think all of that left me a cold, callous person. I was broken and I was hurt. So I thought everybody and everything around me is going to be just like me. That was the theme of my 20s. I don't know exactly when I started growing a conscience because I remember never feeling anything, always feeling very distant and never really feeling emotions. I would know things were right or know things were wrong, and I would never really feel anything. I stopped crying when I was 8 when I realized that things with my father were never gonna get better. So I think that carried on into adulthood, that I became this, this monster. I'm going from place to place. Eventually, it landed me to a point where I was back at my brother's. He was having a lot of marital issues with his wife as well as a result of his use. I hit rock bottom, and I didn't just hit it, I stayed there. He ended up getting divorced from his wife. I ended up losing my apartment as a result of the owner selling the house. One day I just didn't have it in me anymore. I decided that that day was a great day for me to attempt to kill myself. I remember driving into a tree at about 70 miles an hour. I come to, I'm in a hospital. I can't move. I really just wanted to die. 9 months in the hospital. That's a long time to spend with the only person that I hated most in the world. So I get out of the hospital. I'm back at my parents' house. I would have my brother go on runs for me and go pick up stuff. I treat him some of my medication. He shuts up and he nods out, and I shut up and I nod out. And I come to, and he's purple. I could tell from his eyes that he had already been. That did something to me, the loss of my brother. I lost hope because I saw myself in him, and I said, oh, if it happened to him, it's going to eventually happen to me. Time went on. I come home from getting some groceries, and I see my father over my mother, and she's on the floor, and she's crying and screaming, and I grabbed him by the neck, and I threw him on the floor, and I'm standing over him. The last thing I told my father was that he was going to, alone, with nobody around him and unloved. A week later, he had left, and then he had died. And there was no love lost. I was still carrying a ton of resentment and a ton of anger. And then I remember my mother having a stroke, and I finally called my oldest brother, and I'm like, dude, I can't take care of her anymore. It feels like it happened overnight that I became homeless. That was the start of me actually living on the street. It only got darker from there. I've seen several people get in front of me. I had sutured a friend up on the street while homeless. I've been by other homeless people. I've held pressure on a 14-year-old that got in the chest. These are the depths that had taken me. I was alive, but I felt dead for a long time. I spent about a little under 2 weeks in an ICU. I wake up to my sister standing over me. I legitimately had thought that I was. She says to me, you're coming to California with me. I was like, okay. And I remember us having like a 3-hour discussion. She showed me compassion that I had never felt before. I wasn't used to somebody showing some sort of compassion, some sort of love. I ended up coming out to California. The first thing I did was come to a meeting of Anonymous. It gave me a little glimpse of what life could look like. For people in general, emotions are hard, but for men, it's a lot of times our ego gets in the way of being vulnerable, where I used to see vulnerability as a weakness. Now I realize that it's actually strength, and the fact that people have the courage to share things that are super personal, and it had turned my world upside down. And it went back to that insecurity that I had as a child, that I'm not enough. I'm never enough. I admitted that I had no power over anything. I admitted for once in my life, I didn't know anything, and decided that the only way for me to live is to surrender on a daily basis. I am not religious. I am extremely spiritual. And I like this quote from David Bowie that says, religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for people who have been through hell. Being in the rooms and being able to bring a smile to my colleagues' faces has afforded me the ability to cultivate relationships with normal people, with with people who only identify as, with people on the street that are struggling. I've put together a group of really solid men. I definitely get a little emotional because I never had real friends before. I'm getting married to the woman of my dreams who loves all of me, good and bad. She has more emotional sobriety than I'm definitely the dramatic one in the relationship for sure. But the fact that I've been able to not only have a relationship, but have a thriving relationship with a woman when all I used to do is use and manipulate women is a testament to me doing a 180-degree turn. I don't take the people in my life for granted. I don't take the program of Anonymous for granted. When I started feeling happy and at peace was when I found my purpose. And my motivation now is to share a message of depth and weight that would be sufficient enough to wake somebody up. I went through hell, so hopefully somebody else doesn't have to. My purpose is to be a servant to people. I have seen my whole life just flourish. I have a great career, my own apartment. If somebody needs help, I'm able to go help that person. If they need financial help, I'm able to help them financially. How I handle conflict now, I don't have to react to people. I don't have to get crazy and want to the person like I used to. I talk. I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected, I'm emotionally well regulated, which is something I never thought I'd say. And being a loving, caring, positive person, I've gotten everything I could have ever wanted.